At the beginning of each lesson, you're going to see a list of objectives. Here we have 6 objectives. And some of these objectives will allow me to introduce what I would call some term projects. So term projects will be due, and they will be for marks. And one of the term projects that I need you to pay attention to would be the relationship between government and citizens. So for students that struggle with essay writing, or they would just like to see stronger essay writing, one of the central themes of all essays that we see this year is what should be the relationship between government and governed. So if we can begin to prepare for that now, then we'll be more likely to be sound and specific, and maybe even comprehensive later. So that's a recurring theme I'm going to ask you to watch for in all of our lessons, relationship between government and governed. We'll talk about it politically, we'll talk about it economically, we'll even talk sometimes about it socially, but in the end, when you're writing an essay, what you're really doing is attacking someone's vision for government and you're presenting your own. So that's a theme that I'd ask you to begin to look for. Within that theme, we have ideologies. So what is an ideology? An ideology is the way you see the world. So I see the world differently than you, and that doesn't make you wrong, it doesn't make me wrong, it makes us different. We have different ideologies. Ideology simply is the way you see the world. It's your beliefs, it's your values, it's your assumptions. So when you do an A1, and an A1 is the 3 sources that you interpret and then you relate, what you're trying to find is an ideological perspective, right? Now, what is the ideological perspective within this source? So when we're saying an ideological perspective, what we're really saying is, what's the person's ideology? How do they see the world? What are their values? What are their assumptions? So when you're breaking down a cartoon this year, and it's presenting to you some kind of remedy for an issue in society, one of the ways to interpret that cartoon is to say, these are the assumptions the cartoonist is making. And typically one of the assumptions is about the nature of mankind. You know, if this, then what? If man is good, then what kind of government can we have? If man is good, then what kind of economy can we have? But if man is violent, if man is selfish, if man is exploitive, if man is irrational, then what kind of government do we need? So within that relationship between citizens and the government, there's room for ideological perspectives, views of the world that include values and assumptions. And this is what the intro to the textbook and chapter 1 of the textbook talks about. So all we are is a manifestation of our life experiences. So the things that happen to you shape your ideology. So that, and it's very scientific, so that if something happens to you 20 times in a row, then you end up formulating a pattern expecting that to happen again. So if 20 times in a row you meet someone new, and the first thing that person does is slap you upside the head, you begin to distrust people. You begin to expect that people are violent based upon your experiences. So what is an ideology? It's the way you see the world. How do we determine how we see the world? What shapes that? Well, we're shaped by our life experiences. So if you're abandoned, that's going to affect your ideology. If you're orphaned, if you have very few close friends, all of these things will affect how trusting you are of others. So if early in life, maybe it's Christmas morning and you wake up and you go up to Joe Rich to be at your grandparents' house, and while you're at Joe Rich, your dad calls and says that he's having a barbecue, and your mom's like, barbecue in December? I realize the Okanagan's warm, but why would you be having a barbecue? It turns out he burnt the house down. That's probably gonna probably going to affect your ideology, right? Just a little bit. You're probably going to hate people. Life experiences. We also get our ideologies from our role models, from our family, from our friends. Included in that can be our community, our religion, our teammates. They have influence on us. But we see in the United States today a country divided on ideology. You see people that want a different relationship with their government. Economically, they might want freedom from government. Others want freedom through government. And that causes conflict. It doesn't make one ideology correct. If we have discussions in class, and you open up about your ideology, and I open up about mine, neither of us are correct. Just different people. So, ideology is the way we see the world. It's the way we experience new stimuli. So if something new happens to me, how do I compute what's going on here? I try to relate it to the things I already know, to past experiences. Well, in the past, people have been evil. So I expect that this is going to blow up in my face. Something's not right here. Somebody's trying to be kind to me. Oh, this can't be real, because everybody I've always met has been evil. So this kind person must actually just be trying to manipulate me. It's part of my ideology, right? So we could spend days and days and days from a psychological standpoint investigating what is ideology. We could talk about sociology and child psychology and look at studies like Piaget and the formative years and things like that. These are those rabbit holes that you can take yourself down. So hopefully the course, in the end, I know you need a number to get into university. And I'm here to help you get that number. And if you have a number, it's like, here's my number, and you're not close, then talk to me about the number. And we can work on that number together. But in the end, exams are very, long-term, really not that important, right? Even whatever number you get in this course long-term, who cares? Most important, we want you to think about these things, right? We want you to think about thinking, some of that metacognition, right? Think about the society around you and how it's evolving and how you're evolving with it and whether or not it's matching up. And what does that mean? So much happening. So, define ideology. It's the way we see the world. It's our beliefs and values and assumptions. If man is good, then I might assume we need capitalism. Capitalism would work if man's good. Because we need freedom from government. Because we don't need government to be a parent. Because I don't have to worry that when I go to the marketplace, when I buy that chicken, it's actually unsafe. Maybe it's rat. If nobody would sell rat in place of chicken because it's cheaper, or nobody would have the food would be so unclean that I'm eating rat feces with my meat. So when you go get a nice pork sandwich, you don't have to worry about feces. So if you trust your fellow man, maybe we don't need government. You can have capitalism, freedom from government. But after reading Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, and you're like, oh man, there's rat feces in that pork. After studying things like the transatlantic slave trade, after looking at the slave industry today, including the abduction of children, you might be like, holy crap, society's not safe. Man is tormented and demented. And if they can't police themselves, something has to police them. So it all comes back to that ideologies. So there are themes of ideologies mentioned in the textbook. And again, one of the themes I like to look at is role of citizen, role of government. And you should be saying, you know what, I'm going to be tested on this. I'm going to be writing essays, but I also might have to look at some multiple choice and say, within this prompt, what are they saying should be the role of government here? Textbook does a good job talking about some of the influences on ideology, so I'm not going to just repeat the textbook. Unlike 20, where we didn't use the textbook at all, we need you to go through the textbook. So that's why I sent that message out, that it would be to your benefit to have gone through the textbook before this class. I understand that probably didn't happen, but it would be great if you could do that this weekend if you haven't. It doesn't mean to read to memorize, but it means get through the textbook. You know, if that means skimming more than reading everywhere, because it's 400 pages long, I get it. But it will be to your benefit, because the course makes better sense after you've seen it once. Hopefully, you're not seeing it for the finale just in January. If you can see it for its whole story now, the whole course will make so much better sense the second time through, and you'll do much better. You'll probably get 20% higher. So you need to get through that textbook. In these digital lessons, I have tons of practice multiple choice, because I know some of you might need that. So the following source defines ideology. It also provides 2 reading comprehension style multiple choice for your practice. So, again, I'm here to help you get better at multiple choice, and I do think that there is some skills that we can unlock there. First thing, always read the question first. According to the above statement, an ideology provides all the following except a view of nature of man, right? A plan for social change, a set of ethical guidelines, an unprejudiced perspective. Well, I'm not even going to read it, and I already know the answer. Based upon what I've said about ideology so far, the answer has to be what? Anybody want to throw it out? A view of human nature. Does that sound like what I've been saying about ideology? Man is good than this, man is bad than this. A plan for social change. So plan for social change is, this is what society should look like in 10 years. This is how the people with Tasman should relate. Men and women should be equal, or men and women should not be equal, or same-sex marriages should be legal. These are social visions for society. A set of ethical guidelines. This is what's right or wrong. Or an unprejudiced perspective. There's one of those that is screaming out, that can't be an ideology. And the answer is D, because an ideology by nature is prejudiced. That because of your experiences, we are all prejudiced. Based upon what's happened in the past, we've prejudged the future. It's just scientific. We're all part of an experiment. Or like that dog in Pavlov's experiment. We hear the bell ring and we salivate. It doesn't make the dog bad. It makes the dog an animal. And you're an animal. That's behaviorism, right? So, unprejudiced perspective, no, that can't be it. An ideology is about prejudice. Doesn't make it wrong or right, but we're all prejudiced. So, each ideology attempts to shape society to fit its particular worldview. Right there's a prejudice. This is my worldview. This is the way it should be. Each ideology has a moral dimension. Ideology is normative. It attempts to present its ideas and experiences as inherent in human nature. And from this, it deduces appropriate moral recommendations. It is biased towards a specific group. That's a prejudice. It stands in opposition to others. It universalizes a narrow and limited view and sells this view to others with a crusading zeal. That's ideology. Objective 1 today, define ideology. I think you can leave here knowing what an ideology is. While we did that, we worked on our multiple choice a little bit. So, that's an ideology. Second question. Based upon this, which one of these would they most likely agree with? So very standardized question, saying we're going to give you 4 new things, and we're going to say which one of these things matches up with what is already there. So very standard skill that we're asking for in multiple choice. Every ideology supports the status quo. Would the speaker agree with that? Every ideology calls for radical change. Well, they both can't be right because they're saying different things, but can they both be incorrect? Every ideology presents an oversimplified view of reality. Every ideology has political, economic, social, moral, and religious dimensions. They absolutely have this. One could say this. Some ideologies call for this, some ideologies call for that. But what would the speaker agree with? That's the difficulty with multiple choice. Because when you're reading it, you might get to D and say, well, McBride said in class, ideologies are political, economic, social, moral, and religious. That's got to be your right answer. It's not what the question's asking. The question's not asking, what did McBride say in class are the dimensions of ideologies. It's saying, what would this person agree with? And that's how sometimes people get multiple choice wrong. They don't understand the task. They bring their skates and they're playing basketball. It's not the sport we're playing. Put on the shoes. So, which of the following statements made by this guy, or would agree with this, would this guy agree with? So then you go back and you reread this, and maybe you apply them one at a time and say, every ideology supports the status quo. So, each ideology has moral dimension, normative, it attempts to present its views, it's biased, it stands in opposition, universalized. Is there anything in here that says he likes the status quo? Any sentence, you can pull it out and say, oh, because of that sentence, that's the answer. Or is there a sentence that says, oh man, this person's a radical? Or is there a sentence that says an ideology is an oversimplified view of reality? Or do we go through and say, hey, he's talking about politics, economic, social, moral, and religious? So what we're going to do is on Monday, we're going to have the shortest test of the year, one question, and you guys can tell me the answer to that question. Shortest test of the year, one question. Worth 100%. That'd be funny. It's the only thing I'm going to mark all year. But I'll put it in the grade book, so for a while you either have 100 or 0 as your class average. Isn't that a jerky thing to do? Lesson of today, I'm a jerk. You already knew that. You're just remembering now. So yeah, you guys can tell me the answer to this question on Monday. So another part of our lesson today is to understand that ideologies generally can be divided into two groups: individualism and collectivism. So, by the end of the course, we need you to be able to look at sources and be able to look at and say, oh, this person's an individualist. Or look at a source and say, oh, this person's a collectivist. You need to be able to do that for an A1, for the sources within that. And every essay that you're going to be writing about, they're either going to be presenting you a problem with a collectivist solution, or they're going to be presenting a problem with an individualist solution. And in your answer, you're going to be exploring individualism and collectivism. So it's a pretty important concept. Also on multiple choice, you'll have sources like this one, a cartoon like this one, and you need to be able to break it down into individualism and collectivism. So, term projects. So far we have one. We need you to talk about the role of government and the role of citizen, but within that you have individualism and collectivism. Because there could be an individualist ideology around citizens, or there could be a collectivist. Same thing with government. So somehow in your notes, I need you to take record of this conflict between individualism and collectivism. Now, in the end of the course, maybe that means that you have, a T-chart that's several pages long, and you have individualism and collectivism on both sides. Maybe you have bubbles and create webs. Do it in whatever fashion makes sense to you, but you need to do it. You need to break the course down into this conflict between individualism and collectivism. Now, having said that, You can bring a laptop every day if you want. You can bring a iPad, take notes on that. You don't have to use pen and paper. So if you like to have digital copies of the stuff that you're kind of writing down, so then you can go home and manipulate it and move it around and easily ship things to each other, that's probably where you're headed a year from now, or 2 years from now, when you're in college and university. You're probably not going to be doing pen and paper for much longer. So that means that if you have a Chromebook sitting in the room and you want to grab a Chromebook, they're not always going to be here, but if they're here, you can take notes that way. But it might be to your benefit to organize some of these bigger things, like the conflict between individualism and collectivism, organize some of these bigger things into some digital documents. Because then when you're writing an essay, copy, paste, drag, boom, done. Wow, that was a lot easier now. So, this cartoon shows us the difference between individualism and collectivism. Here's Mr. McBride driving his GMC Hummer at 8 miles per gallon. Hopefully it stays, I don't want to have to replace that GMC Hummer. There's not too many cars like it on the road. And I like to drive by myself. My wife works across the football field. Yeah, she can drive herself to work, right? Let's have 2 cars on the road. No, it's all about us. It's about what's in my self-interest. That's individualism, self-interest. What's good for Russ McBride? My self-interest. So, if we got Joey here in our class, and Joey's going to bring my average down, goodbye, Joey. It's in my self-interest. Selfish, right? Look around the world. Do you see individualism? I think you do. Who owns your house? Who owns your car? Why do we work? Do we work for the glory of the collective? Why are you here? Are you here for the glory of your community? Or are you here because you have personal goals? Individualism, self-interest. Capitalism is individualism, self-interest. Capitalism, right? Democracy is individualism. Collectivism, that's more like socialism, more like authoritarianism. Individualism. Now, individualism, based on social 10, based on related issues 3 and 4, individualism may be irrational because of the depth of birth. Because of the age of stupid that individualism's unlocked. We're using up our finite resources. Because of individualism, we may be already past peak oil. Because of individualism, we've created climate chaos, climate change. So what's the cost of individualism? Social 10, the last half. Our ecological footprints, that's individualism. My massive footprint. Individualism. You need to be able to picture some of these things. What does that look like, individualism? Why is it controversial? So with these terms we're learning this year, why would some people look at individualism and say that's wrong? That's not the way we should organize our lives. Well, from an environmental standpoint, chapter 12, it's not sustainable. On the other side, maybe you live your life for others, right? It's not about self-glory, it's about the collective glory, the common good, the collective interest. That's collectivism. So by the end of the course, we want you to be able to look at the differences between individualism and collectivism. The Social 30-2 textbook actually does an excellent job with this. On page 9, and I know this is 31. Hey, turn right to it. We don't have this textbook, but I have put this visual into our digital textbook notes. I can also do one of these. It's going to be upside down. can be gross, but here we go. Yeah, so what's that going to look like? Who knows? We're going to talk about this a little bit. So under individualism, we often want freedom. Freedom from government, freedom from each other, right? Under collectivism, the need for privacy kind of fades away because we expect everyone to adhere to social norms. Adherence to social norms. So right now I'm looking in a room and everybody has their mask on, and that's great because I'm not going to teach you without a mask on. But that's kind of a collectivist thing we're doing right now. We're doing it for the common good. I'm not doing this for me. You know, when I go to Walmart and I have a mask on, now it's the law for sure, but I've been doing it for months before it was the law. I'd be seeing people and they wouldn't have their mask on, and I'd have mine on, and I'd be like, you know, I'm probably doing this for you because I come in contact with hundreds of people a day, and you've been on your farm pretty isolated. So chances are I'm going to bring the contagion to you, not vice versa. So I'm doing this not for my self-interest, but for collective interest. So collective interest is like the common good, collective responsibility, but with that comes things like adherence to collective norms, a loss of privacy. But there's this idea that we are our brother's keeper. So in a year from now, you see Mr. McBride sitting on the side of the main road in Wetaskiwin. I got a little hat out that says spare change. I've lost everything. If you walk by and he's like, oh, sucks to be him, that's individualism, right? You stop and like, holy crap, man, here's some stuff. Let's get you some food. That's the, I'm my brother's keeper. That's collectivism. So difference between individualism, self-interest, collectivism, group interest. It all comes down to that. Under collectivism, wealth is shared. And in Canada, to some extent, our government forces collectivism upon us with taxation. We get taxed a lot. But we also have collective things like public high schools, public health care. Under individualism, we have ideas like all individuals are unique and valuable, and that competition is better than cooperation. And you know what? It's okay to be both. You might be like, Mr. McBride, I don't know what I am. You say some things and I think I'm a collectivist. You say other things and I think I'm an individualist. I like competition, but I also think I should help others. That's probably real, right? You're probably not going to be 100% one thing or the other. So, we're going to be looking at collectivism and individualism this year. And with any A1, you should be able to see nuances of them. Nuance is like an element, a detail, like we see with this cartoon. What two ideologies or philosophies are explored in the above cartoon? Is it democracy and capitalism? Well, democracy is political individualism. Capitalism is economic individualism. They're not contrasting politics and economics. They're contrasting someone that is looking after the community and someone that's looking after themselves. So the answer is B. How do we get the answer to B to that multiple choice? Vocabulary. This brings me up to another term project. Now I'm not doing this because I'm trying to create a lot of work. I'm doing this because I know how to have success. Our January 2020 class, our class average was above 80. Our class average was above 80 in social. So we had people in the 90s, but our class average was above 80 on the diploma. So not an inflated school award mark. This is the class average. Our June class was going to be even stronger, but we didn't get to write the diploma. So how do we have success? We break it down, and we know one thing that you need is a glossary of key terms. If you knew what collectivism and individualism meant, you get this question right. If you don't, then you might be stuck guessing. So one of the things you need to do this year is when I mention terms that are unclear to you, write them down, ask questions. Because what is multiple choice? To some extent, it's a test of vocabulary. And we're going to have our first tests, within a week, right? So, we have that one next day, the biggest test of the year, one question. So we really need to start getting down some of the language. All right, so we have a quick video. I'm going to stop recording mine, give it a chance to catch up. We're going to have a quick video from Williams. She has the entire course online, so that's another way to see the course. And I absolutely love the teacher, Jennifer Williams. She does a great job. But she does a great job getting us to the S level, to the 60 level. And I hope she doesn't watch this and get offended. But we're trying to get you up to that E level. So I'm teaching to the E. I'm teaching to the 100. And that's what makes the course hard. I could make the course a lot easier and hope that, somebody gets a 60 in the class, but that means somebody else gets a 35. But if I teach up here, then maybe somebody gets a 64 and someone else gets a 98 or 100. So that's why there's a lot of content, a lot of course. So let's see what she's got for us.